was signing the documents? Was it Joe Biden? Was it Hunter Biden? Was it Jill? Was it someone else? Who knows? But the Oversight Project and Congress are both looking into this, along with Andrew Bailey, the Attorney General out of Missouri, is asking the DOJ to investigate the use of Biden's auto pen, the signature that was being dumped on everything in the final hours while Joe was eating ice cream tucked away in a closet somewhere. Here's what the Oversight Project is reporting for us. Now, this is a Heritage Foundation project, and they wrote the following saying, whoever controlled the auto pen controlled the presidency, saying they gathered every document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency or pregnancy, all used the same auto pen signature, except for the announcement that he was dropping out of the race last year. Okay. One of these things is not like the others. Here is the auto pen signature, as you can see. Federal Register. They went back through the documents. This was signed on Thursday, August 11th, 2022. There's Joe Biden's sig right there. Boom. Here's another one. December 30th, 2024. So that's over 2 years later. Same exact signature. So you can just parse through the time difference between that. December 30, 2024, August 11, 2022. It is the exact same. That is an auto pen, right? Here's a signature from the letter, though, saying Biden was dropping out of the race. Looks a little bit different than that one, doesn't it? There's no junior on that one. It says JR, no periods. The Biden, the B looks different. There's 2 strokes on the B versus the 1 stroke on the B on the other one. The R is totally different. There's a loop in the R versus a swipe in the R. And I know R's. I've signed it a lot. Junior, totally missing. Unless that little thing is Joe Biden. It's like an S on the end of it. Doesn't look anything like it. That's him dropping out. Now, Bailey will read through his letter. But remember that this is what Mike Johnson said. This was a great clip. When Mike Johnson went into the president's room and he said, hey, dummy, why are you stopping our exports of liquefied natural gas? We need that to go out. Can you help us with this? Joe Biden said, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. We cut off what now? With the who and the where? Yeah, Joe, you did that. Here was Mike Johnson explaining how that worked.
Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? I don't understand. Liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him. And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminal in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he
wild. Yeah, he didn't know. And the way Mike Johnson tells that story, and listening to that again, we've listened to that clip before, it reminds me of experiences having dealt with people who cannot remember exactly. And when they get caught, they fill in the blank, which is exactly what Joe Biden did. You did this thing. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Let me show you the evidence of what you did. Oh, that. Oh, yeah. They got to fill in the blank because they don't want to be wrong. They recognize, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. I don't remember any of that stuff, but I don't want to look like a fool. And I'm not going to admit that my memory is deceiving me. So I will just fill in the blank and say, oh, I remember what that was. You're wrong. I'm right. It's gaslighting, essentially, is what it is. Joe Biden, though, was covering up for his evaporating brain. And he must have been doing this every single day with everything that was in front of him. It's a sick thing. And Mike Johnson is now capable of talking about this. It would have been nice to hear that much sooner. But that is what we're looking at now. Oversight says for investigators to determine what did Biden actually sign, or even if he had the mental capacity to do it, we need to know. And so Andrew Bailey sent this letter in from Missouri, sending this over to the Inspector General. Says, hey, Mr. Horowitz, right? I write to request that you conduct a full investigation into Biden's mental capacity in his final days in office. By now, Biden's mental decline is famous. Under the 25th Amendment, his inability to make decisions should have meant a succession of power. And this is what we ask, whether or not Biden's decisions and his presidential orders can be invalidated because of a capacity issue. Okay, he was mentally deficient. So just like somebody who cannot enter a contract because they don't have the capacity to do that, they're insane, right? They can't plead guilty to crimes that they are insane about, right? You don't know whether they're mentally capable of doing the thing, right? It's a capacity problem. Here, did Joe Biden have that, right? The usual mechanism would be that the cabinet would say, Joe Biden's gone. Kamala Harris and the rest of them would say, this, all right, we got to take care of the country. We're going to invoke this incapacity clause, which is the 25th Amendment, and to remove him on that basis. And until that happens, Joe Biden's capacity is presumed, right? In other words, he has the presumption, the good faith belief that he has that until they invoke and try to remove him. Since that didn't happen, is there anything that can be done to shatter that veil of protection of presumption of validity of the presidency? Now, instead, it appears that staffers and officers in the Biden administration exploited this, approving things. That would explain why Biden's orders were aggressively much farther left than any other previous president. In fact, if Biden staffers were exploiting his mental decline, those orders are null and void. It's like, how do you prove that, right? Do you have a trial on each one of these orders? Do you invalidate all of the orders? How do you know whether Joe Biden was incapacitated at a specific order, at a time, right? At any particular moment? The states need to know because those orders affect us. For example, the Biden White House purported to vacate the death sentences of several convicted murderers. And as the Supreme Court recently held, states like Missouri can criminally try individuals under state law, even if they were already prosecuted under federal law. We need to know, what can we do here? Biden was also forced to drop out of 2024 because of his obvious decline, even if he even knew about it, right? Because remember, he was sick. They threw him in a closet. Then someone signed that letter. We got this letter. We woke up. Then a couple of days later, Joe Biden emerged after his sickness. He was forced to drop out. Then Johnson recently reported that Biden didn't even know what he was doing. In January 2024, when Johnson was asked about Biden and his moratorium on energy exports, we listened to the clip. He said Biden had no idea what he was doing. Even special counsel Hur described Biden as, quote, an elderly man with a poor memory who could not even remember when he was VP, even within several years when his son passed away. If Biden could not even form a mens rea for a criminal activity, which is very low, that's the guilty mind mental state. And that's what I was saying earlier, right? If you don't have the capacity to form these things because you're insane, there's a different standard under the law because mens rea is the guilty mind, right? I have some intentionality to do the thing. He can't even form that, he's gone. How can one have the confidence that he could be the president? Bailey says, look, there are profound reasons to suspect that Biden's staff and his allies exploited this. In addition to Johnson and the energy problem, those closest to Biden appear to have worked hard to hide this. Johnson also said that staff and elected officials like Kamala and Chuck tried to prevent Johnson from meeting with him. Yeah. Though presidents always have gatekeepers, in Biden's cases, there were walls around him that were higher and higher, trying to shield him from everybody. Staff limited Biden's ability to speak, and prominent DNC committee fundraiser Lindy Lee, you've seen a lot of her everywhere, recently acknowledged that Biden was not in charge either, saying, the people who ran our country for the last 4 years, she says, his staff, his wife, and his son, Hunty Poo. Now, there are a streak of extraordinary far-left orders that were purportedly issued by Biden, all of them recently. So are these valid? Vacating the death sentences of nearly all persons sentenced to death was just one big one that caught some people by surprise. Granting his son Hunter a blanket pardon going back more than 10 years, despite the many promises that he would not do. And he endorsed the legally frivolous theory that the Equal Rights Amendment was timely ratified. Remember that? And we're like, what? That new constitutional amendment? He's, oh yeah, it's an amendment now. We decided. And we're like, no. Indeed, apparently, in reliance on far-left groups, Biden pardoned or commuted the sentences of 2,500 individuals who he described as nonviolent, but he gave clemency to people like Adrian Peeler, who eliminated a mother and her 8-year-old child. That's Joe's person right there. That's his guy. Now this, plus an ocean of other far left orders from Biden, but never supported before his mental decline, strongly suggest he was exploited. Now, it is black letter law that a document is void ab initio when the person signing it lacks mental capacity, right? You can't sign a contract if you're not there. You got to have the capacity to engage in that contract. Now, that is why the 25th Amendment authorizes power to pass to the vice president when the president lacks capacity, right? But that's the question. Like, that's the standard. Like, that's the mechanism by which to invoke that. And that didn't happen. So staffers and the VP cannot constitutionally evade accountability by laundering far left orders through a man who doesn't even know what he's signing. If that has been occurring, then all those orders are void. It would be a great case. Like, I'm for the argument. I'd like to see this litigated for sure. Let's see what the Supreme Court says about it. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of what was really going on behind the scenes in the disgusting gutter of the Biden camp. I thus ask you to launch an investigation or refer my request to another investigating body to determine whether Biden's purported handlers and his orders were issued by a competent president, or which were not. Which ones were valid, which ones were invalid. Who has been running this country for the last few years? I fear that Biden, while he held the office, did so in name only and was a mere puppet for far left unelected staffers. The people deserve to know the truth. I call on you to investigate whether it was Biden or others who took executive actions. If it was not Biden, then the people should know that whatever actions he took were void. Signed, Andrew Bailey. So it's a fun idea, and it would be fun to unpack, certainly. But the undoing of a presidency, I think, would require an extremely high evidentiary bar. And the default bar on that is the amendment, the 25th Amendment, that says if you got a problem with the president's capacity, you got to go through this way to get rid of him. There's no other real mechanism to go after the fact and to remove that. But